Okay, quick welcome. This is an original Tales Fair story, and the way it played out caught me off guard. Let's get into it.
My 9-year-old got a pink treasure box from my grandmother. For your future, it said. My mom threw it in the trash. It's the old woman's garbage, she said. I didn't cry. I took it out and found a booklet inside. 10 hours later, the police were involved. It started with the kind of chaotic energy that only a 9th birthday party can generate. A swirling vortex of sugar and high-pitched laughter that seemed to vibrate in the very drywall of my home. My living room had transformed, or rather, it had surrendered to an explosion of party supplies that defied all laws of organization and aesthetic coherence. There were streamers that had already begun to sag under the weight of humidity and expectation, and balloons that bobbed against the ceiling like trapped thoughts trying to escape. The air itself was thick, heavy with the scent of cheap vanilla frosting and that specific metallic tang of panic that sits in the back of a mother's throat when she is hosting her entire family. I am not, nor have I ever been, one of those curated mothers you see on social media, the ones who construct balloon arches with the precision of civil engineers and whose party favors match the napkins in a way that suggests a life devoid of chaos. No, my philosophy has always been one of survival and simple joys. We have a cake that hasn't collapsed, we have candles that will light, and nobody has gone into anaphylactic shock, so by all metrics that matter, we are already winning. Ruby was buzzing, absolutely vibrating with an energy that seemed to emanate from her very bones. She had been bouncing between her gifts since breakfast, treating the pile of wrapping paper and plastic like a dragon guarding its hoard. There were plastic rings scattered across the rug, tubs of neon slime that I knew would eventually end up embedded in the sofa fabric, and those little squishy toys that seem to multiply in the dark corners of the house when you aren't looking. Children were running through my hallway with the reckless abandon of wild horses, treating my home like a theme park where the rules of gravity and indoor voices did not apply. And then, inevitably, the atmosphere shifted. It was a subtle change at first, like a drop in barometric pressure before a storm, signaling the arrival of my parents. My mom and dad walked in with that special heavy energy they bring to every family event, a mixture of martyrdom and royalty. Must they carried themselves as if their mere presence was a benevolent favor bestowed upon us, as if the rest of us should be dropping to our knees in gratitude that they had carved out space in their busy schedules of judgment to be here. And trailing behind them, like a second, more glamorous stormfront, was my sister Rebecca with her daughter Isabella. Isabella is a year older than Ruby, 10 years old, and she is Rebecca's miniature reflection in that uncanny, almost unnerving way some family genetics copy and paste themselves. As if the DNA was so proud of the original design, it refused to alter a single line. She had Rebecca's hair, cascading and perfectly groomed. She had Rebecca's smile, practiced and dazzling. And most importantly, she had Rebecca's posture. That innate, an unspoken belief that the world should adjust its lighting to better illuminate her face. I noticed the dynamic the moment they crossed the threshold, a dynamic as old as my own childhood, playing out in real time. Rebecca didn't do anything openly rude, and Isabella didn't do anything overtly mean. They were too sophisticated for that, but the adult's attention drifted to them, like iron filings to a magnet. "Oh my gosh, look at Isabella," the aunts cooed, their voices pitching up. "She's so mature. She's going places." Meanwhile, Ruby, the birthday girl, the reason we were all gathered here in this frosting-scented chaos, got plenty of smiles too. But they were different. They were the kind of polite, fleeting smiles you give a cute puppy before turning your attention back to the prize-winning show dog. I told myself I was imagining it, that the insecurity was a ghost from my own past whispering in my ear. But the feeling lingered, heavy and cold in my stomach. And so we moved through the rituals. The cake was cut, the candles were lit, and we sang Happy Birthday with too many people and not enough rhythm, a cacophony of love and obligation. Ruby made her wish, her cheeks puffing out as she blew out all 9 candles with a fierce determination, as if she were personally defeating the darkness. It was in that moment, just as the smoke from the candles was curling up toward the ceiling, that the package arrived. It wasn't a dramatic delivery, no fanfare, no violin music swelling in the background, just a normal brown box placed by the door like every other package in America. But Ruby, with the sharp eyes of a child who knows her own name, she saw the label and lit up like someone had just handed her a map to El Dorado. "It's for me," she gasped, the words tumbling out of her mouth as she abandoned her slice of cake and rushed to the door. "It's for me." "It's from your great-grandma," I told her, my voice softening as I recognized the handwriting. My grandma, my dad's mom, had a way of writing names that looked like she was blessing them, the ink flowing in elegant shaky loops that spoke of age and deliberate care. Ruby hugged the box to her chest for a second before tearing at the tape, acting as if she could absorb the love through the cardboard itself. Inside was a pink treasure box, glittery, undeniably magical to a child's eyes, the kind of object that a 9-year-old claims immediately with their whole soul. Ruby's hands were gentle, reverent even, as she lifted it out. "Mine," she whispered, a word that was both a claim and a prayer. But before Ruby could even properly show us what was inside, before the glitter could catch the light, my mom stepped in. She didn't move slowly, and she didn't move kindly. She moved with the frantic urgency of someone trying to snatch a hot pan before a child gets burned. "No, no," she said, her voice sharp and too fast, cutting through the joy in the room. "You don't touch that." Ruby blinked, her smile faltering, confused by the sudden aggression. "Why?" My mom's tone shifted instantly into her favorite mode. Practical authority. It is the voice she uses when she wants sheer control to sound like common sense, a tone designed to make you feel foolish for even questioning her. "It's garbage," she said, her lip curling slightly. She sends weird things. It could be dangerous." Dangerous! The word hung in the air, absurd and heavy. It was as if she were suggesting my 91-year-old grandmother had mailed a live raccoon or a box of radioactive waste. Ruby froze, her small fingers tightening around the little pink box. She looked at me, her eyes wide and searching, and I watched her joy stumble and fall like she'd stepped on a crack in the sidewalk. And then my mom did it. She reached out, took the entire treasure box, everything inside, the whole thing, and walked straight to the kitchen. She didn't place it in a recycling bin. She didn't set it aside on a high shelf. She threw it into the trash. The real garbage. The one with the wet coffee grounds and the sticky remnants of the party. And the bin you don't casually reach into unless you have lost something important or your dignity. Loud enough for Ruby and everyone in the living room to hear, she declared, "It's the old woman's garbage." The trash lid slammed shut. It was a hard, final sound, like a door closing on a room you are never allowed to enter again. Ruby froze for half a heartbeat. Then her face crumpled. It wasn't just sadness. It was a complex mix of confusion, embarrassment, and hurt. The kind of profound hurt kids experience when the world suddenly changes its rules and nobody warned them. The room went weirdly silent. The other kids stopped moving, sensing the tension. Adults glanced at each other, eyes darting away, pretending not to see, looking like they didn't know what to do with their hands. Someone's kid dropped a plastic fork onto the laminate floor, and nobody laughed. Rebecca didn't say anything. She just stood there, sipping her drink. Isabella watched, her eyes wide but curious, observing the scene like it was a show she hadn't expected but didn't want to miss. My dad stood there the way he always does, present, physically occupying space, but completely absent in spirit. He looked at the trash can, then at the cake, then at Ruby, his eyes pleading with the universe to resolve this conflict without him having to pick a side. Ruby's eyes went to me. They weren't accusing, and they weren't angry. They were just small, diminished. They asked, "Did I do something wrong?" I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't give my mom the satisfaction of a scene. Because I knew that a scene would only allow her to paint me as the hysterical daughter. Instead, I went cold and steady, a glacial calm settling over my skin because Ruby was watching me. I moved my body between Ruby and my mom like a shield. It wasn't a dramatic gesture, just pure instinct, the way you step in front of your kid when a dog barks too loudly. "Go with the kids for a minute, sweetheart," I told Ruby softly, keeping my voice level. "Go show them your other gifts." Ruby hesitated, still staring at the trash can, as if her treasure box might crawl out on its own. Then, seeing the steel in my eyes, she nodded and shuffled away, trying to be brave, trying to act like she wasn't shattered. Her small shoulders hunched against the sudden coldness of the room. The moment she was out of earshot, the moment the laughter of the other children resumed in the hallway, I turned back to my mom. My voice was calm and flat, devoid of any tremor. "You need to leave." My mom laughed, a short, sharp sound, as if I'd told a joke she didn't quite get. "Because of some garbage. You're really doing this right now." I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't debate whether humiliating my child was garbage or principle. I simply repeated the command, giving it the weight of a stone dropping into a well. "Get your things. Leave." My dad's eyes flicked to mine. I could see the gears turning in his head, considering the old pattern, the decades-old script we all followed. Smooth it over. Keep the peace. Don't upset your mother. He looked at me, waiting for me to back down, to make the joke, to apologize. But I stood like a statue. And so, he did what he always does. He followed her out. They left together, a united front of indignation. Rebecca stayed. Isabella stayed. The party continued because kids don't know what to do when adults rupture the air, and parents are trained to plaster smiles over disasters. But the feeling had changed. The air was thinner. Ruby laughed less. She kept glancing toward the kitchen, like the trash can was a monster waiting to snap its jaws. Later, when the guests were gone and the house was quiet, buried under the debris of wrapping paper and deflation, Ruby was still off. She asked the questions that hurt, the ones that pierce right through a parent's heart. Why did Grandma throw it away? Is it bad? Does Great-Grandma not like me? I pulled her close on the sofa, wrapping her in a blanket, keeping my answers age-safe but honest. "It wasn't your fault," I told her, smoothing her hair. "Sometimes grown-ups get stressed and act wrong. Great-Grandma loves you. That gift was for you." Ruby's voice went tiny, barely a whisper. "Then why did she throw it away?" I swallowed the anger like a hot coin, feeling it burn all the way down. "I don't know," I said, because I couldn't say, "because your grandmother thinks she owns the world and everyone in it." Not to a 9-year-old. I tucked Ruby into bed later with extra softness, as if my hands could undo what my mother had done, as if I could reshape the memory into something less jagged. And after Ruby was asleep, breathing deeply in the dark, I went to the kitchen trash. I didn't turn on the main light, just the small one over the stove. I reached into the bin, past the paper plates and the discarded napkins, and I pulled out the treasure box from the dirty garbage. I cleaned it off with a disinfectant wipe, polishing away the coffee grounds until the glitter sparkled again. Only then did I open it properly for the first time. Inside, beneath a layer of pink tissue paper, I found a booklet. It wasn't a toy. It had banking language on the cover, Ruby's name printed in official font, the kind of paperwork grown-ups fight over. I still didn't know what it meant, only that my mom had reacted to it with a visceral rejection. I didn't say anything out loud yet. I just put it aside on the counter and stared at it until my eyes felt dry and gritty. 10 hours later, the police were involved. To understand why this escalated so quickly, you have to understand the architecture of my family. My grandma is my dad's mom. Like, that's an important detail, because my mother has always acted like it means everything my grandma does is optional. Optional love, optional gifts, optional respect. When I was little, my grandma used to send small things, birthday cards with cash taped inside, little for later envelopes. Not huge money, just the kind of careful, old-fashioned generosity that says, "I thought of you." My mom always opened them first. I have one memory I can replay like a home video, grainy but vivid. I'm 10 years old. I'm standing in the hallway, the sun casting dust motes in the air. I spot my grandma's handwriting on an envelope on the side table. Before I even touch it, my mom's voice cuts through the air like a whip. "Give it here." Not "let me help," not "let's open it together." Just a command. She peels the tape, counts the bills with quick, practiced fingers and says, "We'll keep it safe." Like the money belongs to her the second it enters the house. When you're 10, you can't prove anything. You just learn the rules. You learn that ownership is a fluid concept. My dad used to try to soften it. He'd hand me the empty card later, when she wasn't looking, and say, "Just call her, okay?" Like he was trying to keep peace in a house that didn't allow peace. He never fought my mom head on. He just tried to smooth the edges after she cut them. A janitor of emotions cleaning up the mess. Rebecca, my sister, was different. She could do no wrong. She was the sun around which my mother orbited. If she wanted something, my mom called it smart. If I asked a question, my mom called it starting trouble. It wasn't one big event. It was 1,000 tiny moments and a slow erosion of self-worth. By high school, Rebecca had become my mom's right hand. I can still picture it. Rebecca sitting next to my mom on speakerphone for bank stuff, writing down confirmation numbers like it was a job, preening under the attention. My mom would say, "Don't worry, I handle these things." And Rebecca would nod. Like that was a compliment, not a warning. My dad got pushed out in quieter ways. At dinner, if Dad disagreed, my mom would cut him off with, "Ask your mother," or "Don't be foolish," and he'd go quiet, retreating into his food, having learned that silence was cheaper than a fight. As an adult, I moved out. I built my own life, but the pattern didn't break. It just stretched. My mom still insisted it was easier if important mail and packages went through her. She framed it like help, like convenience. "And I'm home all day," she'd say. "I'll sign for it." And because it's wrapped in family and help, it's hard to call out without sounding dramatic. Then Ruby was born. And I realized Ruby didn't just make me a mother. She made my mother feel entitled in a new way. Ruby became the newest lever to pull. "Let me handle it. I'll keep it at my house. I'll manage the mail." All disguised as support. Meanwhile, Rebecca had Isabella, and the favoritism didn't stop at siblings. It inherited. It flowed down the bloodline like a genetic trait. It was subtle enough that I couldn't prove it, because nobody said the quiet part out loud. It showed up in the way space got allocated. If there was one good chair at Thanksgiving, Isabella landed in it. If there was one extra slice of pie, it drifted her way. If someone was handing out help, rides, sign-ups, I can take her for the weekend, it was always Isabella who got offered the upgrade. Ruby wasn't mistreated, exactly. She was managed. A quick smile, a pat on the shoulder, and then attention moved on like she'd already been accounted for. And I'd hear my own thoughts do the old dance. Maybe I'm making this up. Maybe I'm just sensitive. Then it would happen again. So, when that pink treasure box showed up for Ruby, something clearly meant for Ruby's future. It wasn't just a gift. It was a bright, undeniable moment where my mom couldn't pretend she was being neutral. And when she threw it away in front of Ruby, it didn't feel random. It felt like the old patterns snapping into a new, more vicious shape. The next morning, the air was crisp, oblivious to the turmoil in my chest. I dropped Ruby off at school, like everything was normal. But that's the thing about being a parent. You learn to perform stability with the same skill you used to reserve for job interviews. Ruby still looked shaken. her backpack hanging heavy on her shoulders. Her eyes kept flicking to me, like she was checking whether I was okay too, mirroring my own anxiety. "I'm okay," I told her, forcing a smile. "You're okay." She nodded, but she didn't believe me. Not fully. Children are essentially emotional Geiger counters. They pick up on the radiation, even when you bury the source. Then I drove to the bank named on the booklet. It was a sterile, quiet place, smelling of carpet cleaner and money. I walked up to the counter and handed the booklet over, like it was nothing, like I was asking about a savings account with $20 in it. "Can you tell me what this is?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. And the teller typed something in, and her face did that quick shift, the professional mask slipping for half a second. It was subtle, a tightening of the corners of her mouth. If I didn't spend my whole life reading people for signs of danger, I might have missed it. She asked for my ID. I handed it over. She didn't tell me anything, just said, "One moment," and disappeared into the back. I waited too long. Long enough to count the tiles on the floor. Long enough to consider whether I'd accidentally walked into a felony. People kept glancing over. A second employee appeared behind the glass, looking at me. Someone whispered. I could feel it on my skin. Something was off, and nobody was letting me in on what. I sat there trying to look calm because I didn't want to be that woman in a bank lobby, the one causing a scene. Inside, and my mind was running marathons. Is this a scam? Did I just walk into someone else's account? Is this why my mom called it dangerous? Then the police walked in. I was still sitting there when they approached me. They moved with that deliberate slowness that is meant to be calming, but is actually terrifying. My stomach dropped through the floor. I kept thinking, this is Ruby's birthday booklet. What did I walk into? The officer asked for my ID again. I handed over my driver's license, my hand trembling slightly. He looked at the photo, looked at my face, checked the document carefully, like he was making sure I was real. I could feel my heartbeat pulsing in my throat, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. He asked basic questions, measured and practiced. Where did you get this booklet? Why did you come in today? Have you ever had an account here before? Has anyone asked you for your documents or tried to use your identity? I answered truthfully. It was in a birthday gift for my daughter, I said, my voice sounding thin in the large room. My mom threw the whole thing in the trash. I pulled it out later. I came in because I didn't know what it was. The officer listened without reacting, maintaining that calm-faced cop demeanor they have when they've already heard 50 versions of human behavior that day. Then he told me the only thing he would confirm without giving a lot of details. The bank had flagged this as a potential identity fraud situation. Someone had been attempting to impersonate an authorized person tied to the account. "Yes, would you like to file an identity theft report?" he asked. I just stared at him. Identity theft. From a child's birthday gift. My brain tried to reject it like a bad email attachment, but I heard myself say, "Yes." He took a brief statement, gave me a case number, and then he left. Just like that. No handcuffs, no dramatic reveal. Just a paper trail, and the hollow feeling that someone had been wearing my name like a mask. The police left, and the silence in the bank returned. But it was heavier now. I went back toward the counter. The bank staff's energy was completely different. Overly polite, careful, almost relieved, like I had passed some invisible test. A manager brought me into an office, a small glass-walled room that felt like an interrogation chamber, disguised as a consultation space. He apologized in that careful corporate way. "We had to verify who you were because of activity on the account," he said. He explained the minimum. I was listed as an authorized adult on the account, even though I didn't know it. The manager tapped the booklet on the desk and said, "This is a 529 college savings plan your grandmother opened for Ruby." The account was flagged because someone attempted actions they weren't authorized to perform. Now that they'd verified it was actually me, They could finally show me what they were allowed to show me. Then he printed a summary sheet and slid it across the desk. I looked down. I saw the balance for the first time. $194,000. My first thought wasn't greed. It was shock. Pure, unadulterated shock. That's a real amount of money. That's a future. That's not garbage. That's freedom. And on the printout, I saw lines of attempted actions, requests that were submitted and denied. And one line jumped out so hard my vision narrowed to a pinprick. An attempted change to the beneficiary. I read the name tied to that attempted change, and my blood went cold. I walked out of the bank in a daze, clutching the printout like it was radioactive. I didn't know whether it was my mom or my sister who pushed it through, but I knew it was family because the attempted beneficiary name pointed straight into my own life. I went home stunned and heartsick. I always knew my family was difficult, but I didn't think they were capable of trying to take Ruby's future like this. I sat there at my kitchen table, staring at the paper, realizing that betrayal isn't just a feeling anymore. It has a name on it. Ruby was named as beneficiary on this account, but someone tried to change the beneficiary, delete my daughter, and add my niece, Isabella. After the bank visit, I waited for updates. Nothing came. No calls, no emails, no magical resolution. Just days passing with that sick feeling that something was happening somewhere, and I couldn't see it. The silence was loud. Ruby was quiet for days after the party, in a way that didn't match her. Not sulking, not dramatic, just smaller. She moved through the house like a ghost. On the third night, I found her on her bed with the pink treasure box on her lap. Fingers tracing the glitter like she was trying to understand how something can be yours and not yours at the same time. She didn't look up when she asked, "Did I do something to make Grandma mad?" My chest tightened, a physical ache. "No, a baby." She finally lifted her eyes, and they were swimming with tears. Then why did she look at me like that? Her voice cracked on the last word. Like I was dumb. I sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping under my weight, and kept my voice steady. "Grandma's feelings are not your responsibility." Ruby blinked fast, trying not to cry. "But she likes Isabella." There it was. The thing kids notice long before adults admit it. The truth that hangs in the air at every family gathering. I took a breath, struggling to find the right words. "Sometimes grown-ups have favorites," I said, careful and honest, without dumping adult ugliness on a child. "And sometimes they're wrong for that." Ruby's mouth trembled. "Am I not good enough?" I shook my head immediately, fierceness rising in my chest. "You are more than enough. You don't have to earn love with grades or trophies or being easy. You are my kid. That's already enough." She stared at the treasure box, then whispered, "So, I didn't lose." I swallowed. "No," I said softly. "You didn't lose. And nobody gets to decide your value in my house. Nobody." Ruby leaned into me like she'd been holding her breath for days. I wrapped my arms around her and held on until her shoulders unclenched. Then she pulled back and said, very small, "Can we keep it on the shelf where they can't touch it?" I nodded, looking at the shelf high up on the wall. "Yes, that's exactly where it's going." 4 days after the bank visit, my phone rang. The screen lit up with a single word, "Mom." I stared at the screen for a full second before answering, unlike I was deciding whether to step back into a room that had burned me before. The ringing sound felt aggressive, demanding. Finally, I swiped green. The moment I picked up, she was furious. There was no hello, no preamble. "Did you call the police on me?" she snapped. "You told them I impersonated you." My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles turned white. "I didn't tell them anything," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I brought the booklet in because Ruby's name was on it. Don't play innocent." "Your grandmother told me what she was sending," she snapped. "She told me." Then she went straight to guilt, her weapon of choice. "I raised you," she said, her voice sharp with outrage. "This is how you treat your family? After everything I've done?" I felt something in me finally move from shock into clarity. But it was like a fog lifting. So I asked the question I'd been avoiding, the one that mattered. "Well, did you impersonate me?" She didn't deny it like an innocent person denies something. She didn't say, "Of course not." She denied it like a person who believes denial is power. "No," she said. "I'm your mother. You wouldn't exist if it weren't for me." That wasn't an answer. It was ownership. My stomach turned. I said the one fact that mattered, the one she couldn't talk around. "Well, someone tried to change the beneficiary from Ruby to Isabella," I said. "It's either you or Rebecca." There was a beat of silence, a heavy, pregnant pause, just enough to prove she understood exactly what I meant. Then she pivoted, not to innocence, but to justification. The mask slipped completely. Do you think it's fair your daughter gets everything and Isabella gets nothing?" she hissed. "I don't know how you manipulated your grandma, but it's not going to work." My voice went very calm, deadly quiet. "So, it was you." And then my mother said the thing that still makes my skin crawl, because she said it like she was being reasonable. "You don't understand," she said. "That's her life. Isabella is so talented. You know how expensive a good education can be. You can't take it away from her. She is your niece." I stared at the table in front of me for a few seconds, watching a dust mote float in a sunbeam. "And Ruby," I said. "It's different," she snapped. "Don't twist things." Different. I tasted blood where I'd bitten my tongue earlier in the call. I didn't even remember doing it. "Different, how?" I asked. Silence. Well, not angry silence. Not dramatic silence. A silence that said, "Because I decided so." I clicked off. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't scream. I just ended the call. I didn't need more. I had clarity. And it hit me like grief. It wasn't just that they tried to steal money. It was that they tried to steal Ruby's future, to hand it to another grandchild. That was the betrayal that cut deepest. That was the erasure. So I did what I should have done years ago, if I'm being honest. I cut them off. Not with speeches, not with social media posts, but with actions. First, I went to my bank. I had been sending my parents $200 a month. I made decent money, and I wanted to be a good daughter. It was so routine, I almost forgot it existed. I canceled it. Turns out I could press cancel just fine when it wasn't wrapped in guilt. My finger hovered for a second over the confirmation button because muscle memory is powerful, because the training runs deep. Then I pressed it anyway. Next, I called Ruby's school. I spoke to the administrator, a kind woman who sounded worried by the tone of my voice. I removed Mom and Rebecca from every pickup list, every emergency contact form, every volunteer sheet. I removed their numbers like I was pulling thorns out of skin. No more help, no more openings. When I finished, I just stood in my kitchen feeling strange, numb, shaky, like my body didn't know what emotion was appropriate for the moment. I just ended the family I was born into. The silence in the house was absolute. I stared at my phone, thinking about calling my grandma. She was 91. I didn't want to scare her. I didn't want to add stress. I didn't want to be the reason her heart raced. I was paralyzing myself with the fear of being the bearer of bad news. I was still holding the phone when there was a knock at my door. I opened it, expecting a delivery, maybe a neighbor. But my grandma was standing there. That alone shocked me. I usually visited her. She lived in a nice assisted living facility across town and didn't come out like that very often. Next to her stood a young man I didn't recognize, dressed in a sharp suit. My grandma stepped inside like she owned the air, small and steady, leaning on her cane, but moving with purpose. The young man followed, carrying a folder. Ruby came running downstairs, hearing the voices. She froze on the bottom step. Then her face lit up. "Great, Grandma!" she cried, and ran right into her arms. They had a warm, grounding moment. I affection, reassurance, Ruby feeling chosen and loved. My grandma stroked Ruby's hair like she was smoothing something frayed, murmuring soft words I couldn't catch. I watched it and felt something soften in my chest that I didn't realize had turned to stone. After a minute, my grandma looked at me. Her eyes were clear, sharp as cut glass. "Can we talk alone?" she asked. Ruby went off to play, sensing the gravity of the moment, but happy just to have seen her. My grandma nodded at the young man. "This is my attorney," she said, "and a good friend." He smiled politely, the way attorneys do when they're about to change someone's life. Professional, detached, but kindly. My grandma didn't waste time. She sat on the sofa, arranging her coat. "The bank called me," she said. "They told me everything." I felt my stomach drop. "Grandma, I didn't want to." She held up a hand, silencing me. "You did nothing wrong." Then she said very calmly, "I decided not to press charges." My breath caught. "You didn't?" "It's family," she said, and then her voice cracked just slightly, a fissure in the stone. "But I am heartbroken," she said, "and I am betrayed." She looked at me like she was studying my face, making sure I understood the difference between mercy and forgiveness. "That treasure box," she said, "was only one piece of my estate." I swallowed. "Grandma," she shook her head. "I had planned to split things fairly," she said. "I believed in being fair. I loved all of you." Her eyes sharpened, turning to steel. "After what your mother and Rebecca tried to do, I don't feel comfortable giving them money. I cannot trust them." She didn't shout. She didn't rage. She pronounced it like a judicial decision. "Your mother gets nothing," she said. My mouth went dry. "Your father gets nothing," she added. And that one landed heavier than I expected. He has watched this favoritism for years and called it peace. He was an accomplice by silence. She paused, then said, "Rebecca gets nothing." I stared at her, shocked by the precision of it. The surgical removal of entitlement. Then she added one moral nuance that made my throat tighten. "Isabella isn't at fault," she said. "She's a child. She is learning what they teach her." The attorney opened the folder slightly, ready. "My attorney will set aside $200,000 for Isabella in an investment account," my grandma continued, "that Isabella can access when she is 21, not before." She said it like she was building a fence. Generous but controlled. Be something Isabella could benefit from without her mother's greedy hands in it. Then my grandma looked at me. "The rest," she said, "goes to you and Ruby." She took my hand. Her grip was stronger than it had any right to be at 91. "You are the only decent family I have left," she said simply. I forced a smile, wanting to support her, wanting to be strong. In my head, I was doing math. I expected maybe 300,000 or 400,000 in savings. A lot, but not life-altering. The attorney slid a paper toward me, and I stopped breathing. It wasn't a few $100,000. It was $1.2 million planned for me and Ruby. I just stared at the numbers. The zeros swam before my eyes. "Are you sure?" I whispered. That's a lot." My grandma nodded once. "Yes." Then she leaned closer. "In, and you will keep it secret," she said. "No fighting, no retaliation, no begging at your door." The attorney added quietly, "The paperwork is already signed and in motion. It is done." My grandma's voice went soft for the first time all day. "The truth is set in ink," she said, and I realized something. Ruby wasn't just protected. The people who chose favorites lost access, and the door my mother slammed on my child's birthday. It didn't just close, it locked. 3 years passed. They were quiet years, peaceful years, no contact the entire time. Ruby was 12 now, taller, braver, still Ruby. We lived comfortably in a nice house. Not flashy, I didn't buy a mansion or a sports car, but solid, safe. The kind of home where you don't flinch when the doorbell rings, where the heat works, where the fridge is full. Except one day, there was a knock. I opened the door. It was my mom, my dad, and Rebecca. I still don't know how they found my address. They stood on my porch, looking older, looking worn. They tried to be friendly, like nothing happened. Like 3 years of silence was a quirky misunderstanding, a pause in conversation. "Hi," my mom said, bright and brittle. Their eyes drifted past me into the house. They looked around at the foyer, the new furniture, the sense of peace. Their faces changed. They hadn't expected me to be well off. They expected struggle. "Where does all this come from?" my mom asked, her voice tight, suspicion leaking through. "That's none of your business," I said, my hand on the doorframe. They made small talk anyway, the way sharks circle before biting. "How is Ruby?" "We miss you." Then they slid into it. The real reason. If they'd made bad money decisions, investments gone wrong, lifestyle catching up with them. They needed a temporary loan, just until they got back on their feet. I said no. The mask dropped immediately. My mom's face twisted into that familiar scowl. "That money probably came from your grandma," she spat. "It should belong to all of us. You stole it." I told them to leave. I didn't yell. I just pointed to the street. They left angry, muttering about family like it was a legal claim, like blood was a contract I had violated. Later, I visited my grandma. She was still alive and living in assisted living, sharp as ever, though moving slower now. Ruby and I visited regularly. We were close, real close. We were the family we had chosen. Before I could even bring up the knock at my door, my grandma beat me to it. They came here," she said. My stomach tightened. "Who? Your mother? Your father?" "Rebecca," she said, and the way she said it told me everything, like names that hadn't been spoken in a long time. I stared at her. "They haven't come to see you in years." She nodded, almost amused. 3 years, she said. "Not a card, not a call, not a visit. Then they see your house, and suddenly they remember I'm alive." Ruby sat beside her on the couch, quiet and small, listening without really listening, holding the old woman's hand. My grandma took a slow sip of tea. "They tried to act polite," she said, "like 3 years of silence was nothing, like you were the one being dramatic." I felt something bitter rise in my throat. "What did they want?" She didn't hesitate. "They wanted to know where your money came from," she said. And then they wanted to know if I could still change it." "Of course they did." "They tried to pressure you?" I asked. My grandma gave me a look like I'd asked whether water was wet. "They tried." "And what did you say?" I asked, even though I already knew she wouldn't bend. My grandma set her cup down gently on the saucer. "I told them it's in an irreversible trust," she said. "It can't be changed." She didn't sound angry. She sounded finished. Then she added, quiet and deadly, "I was planning to split everything equally once. Then they showed me who they were." I pictured them standing in her assisted living apartment. Smiles too wide, hope in their eyes. Not hope for her, just hope for the money. People who couldn't be bothered to visit her until they thought there was something left to grab. And then I asked, "How did they take it?" My grandma shrugged like it was weather. "They left defeated." Ruby climbed closer to her, and my grandma reached for Ruby's hand like it belonged there. Like Ruby was the whole point. Ruby was the reason any of this mattered. The 3 of us drank tea together, quiet and happy. The silence no longer heavy, but full of peace. So, what do you think? Did my grandmother do the right thing? Was it okay to cut off her son and my sister Rebecca? And was I right to accept her gifts?